New class changes 2nd of May. Hey guys, Petko here, welcome for another video. As you guys saw, Death Knight and Augmentation Evoker has been nerfed last night, and with that a lot of interesting things are gonna happen, especially when it comes down to physical comp, because they did buff warriors. But let's talk about it, see what exactly the Theory Crafters have said. I have some notes from Theory Crafters, and yeah, see the end results. Anyway, starting first with Frost Death Knight getting yet another buff. This is the 4th consecutive buff on Frost Decay and third consecutive Aura buff. I believe they were already doing quite decently. Now with a 5% buff to Frost Decay, I wouldn't be surprised if this pick climbs to A+ tier, which is gonna be interesting. I'm gonna be trying Frost Decay myself personally. Unholy Decay has caught a nerf. Now, with the recent hotfixes on Holy Decay, as they said here, they're performing way better than they want them to. So they nerfed Magus of Death, they nerfed Graveyard, right there, the Apocalypse they nerfed quite heavily here, but also buffed Sanlin. So all of this is definitely a nerf, and I'm just gonna show you what the main Theory Crafter of Death Knight has said. They said roughly 1.6% single target nerf, and roughly 5.7% Mythic Plus nerf in general for like all scenarios. But he goes on saying here minus 7.8% nerf in a pure AoE. That is the worst case scenario depending on RNG as well. So roughly you can expect Unholy Decay to do let's just say on average 7% less AoE damage and roughly 2% less ST. Now what does that mean for Death Knights? That means Unholy is still going to be one of the strongest DPSers. However, the gap wouldn't be that big compared to the rest of the specs. Unholy is still by far the strongest defensive spec in this game, and nothing can really kill Unholy. That's why you see sometimes on like 20 and 21s double Unholy combos, because they don't only do damage. No, yeah, I think that's how it's called. Anyway, but they're also extremely tanky. They can't really die, so win-win. It's still going to be good, but it's not going to be absolutely bonanza, broken, you know, million years away from anybody else. Moving forward to Devourer DH. Yet another meta spec here gets to be nerfed. This time around, Devourer is getting a 30% Aura nerf and also Annihilator nerf, right? So I believe the developer notes here was saying the reason why they did this is because they were obviously so far ahead in Mythic rating. If you guys have seen my recent video like 10 hours ago or so, I made a post about exactly this issue. Now that nerf here is going to account for roughly 5%, I think like 5.2% nerf in general for like all content, whether you play raiding or Mythic Plus. Devourer is still going to be an amazing choice for Mythic Plus comp. Likely still going to be the meta spec, but now other specs are coming closer, for example, Warlocks, etc. But they still should be one of the best DPSs, if not the best. Oh no, not gonna be the best, but for sure one of the best. Vengeance getting a 33% armor buff, give or take. This is a nice durability changes here for Vengeance. That is exactly what they needed, a bit more durability, and that's gonna help them significantly to become tankier in Mythic Plus. Guardian Druid. So TLDR and Guardian Druid is that they're not happy with how much single target the Guardian Druid specs can do, but they're also not happy with the tank / threat issues that they're experiencing outside of cooldowns. So what they did here is they nerf Ravage Raise Maul by 20%, then they nerf Red Moon damage by 20%, they nerf WoW Guardian effectiveness quite heavily here, but also gave you a trash buff of 200% and 100% trash bleed damage increase. So all of this should help you sustain better aggro, especially without your cooldowns, and unfortunately reduce your single target output. Now you guys already know Guardian was the 2nd best tank in the game. Specifically why is because of their massive damage both on AoE and single target. This is definitely going to reduce the viability of the spec, but however it will help you with sustaining aggro much better, which obviously for me is still a W. That's it. Moving forward to a Restoration Druid. This time around the Restoration Druid, keep in mind they got buffed last week. Now they got -3 healing reduced here, all healing spells, and also Everbloom has been nerfed. The value goes from 2550 to 2040. Restoration Druid is still going to be the best healer spec in this game. I don't think that's gonna change anything. So if you are Restoration Druid fresh reroll, don't worry about it. This might close the gap between the Resto Druid, Resto Shaman, or Mistweaver Monk. Actually, Resto Shaman is never a threat to Restoration Druid, because Resto Shaman is always played in a physical comp. And if you don't play that, you play always a Druid or a Mistweaver Monk. So that might close the gap between Monks and Restoration Druids a little bit. But for the most part, Druids are still gonna be the preferred choice, because Brewmaster Monks right now are the best tank. And even though Mistweaver can do more damage, Restoration Druid Mark in the Wild is just incredibly strong. And also unique utility. Moving forward to Augmentation Evoker. Apologies, by the way. I'm still a little bit sick, so my bad. All damage and pet, all ability damage and pet damage is reduced by 5%. However, they fixed an issue with Infernus Blessing, yada yada yada, and also Scale Commander fixes an issue where bombardment damage was not properly modified by the specialization baseline passives. Bombardment damage calculations have been adjusted to compensate. Okay. So they're saying pretty much here, effective damage is going to be unchanged for Devastation and only reduce 5% for Augmentation with the above adjustment. That's it. I'm going to try to find any notes here for Augmentation Evoker. They're saying... So this person has said 2% nerf for... so 2.5% nerf for Scale Commander and 2% nerf for the opposite hero talent. I already forgot. I think it's called Chrono Warden, I think, right? Infernal Blessing, Bombardment changes only affect sim nerds and don't change anything. Okay. So that's pretty much the verdict here so far. Yeah. Augmentation is still gonna be good. Yes. Beastmaster Hunter here got a 4% buff, outer buff. This is the third consecutive buff for Brewmaster. And I believe third consecutive outer buff. They got a 3% outer buff, 3% outer buff into 4%. Now that's pretty much 11% outer buff. And now they are acting on the same wavelength as... I think they were already very close to survival before the buffs. After the buffs here, you might want to play again Dark Ranger BM Hunter over survival pack leader. But once again, waiting for the final sims. Hunters are a little bit slow with sims usually. Waiting a couple of days until they post the results. But so far, this looks to be good news for Beastmaster Hunter. Alright, Hunter right now has also seen some buffs. Rapid fire damage increased by 20, explosive shot by 100%, arcane shot / multi-shot by 30, and also steady shot by 100%. Now keep in mind that Hunters were extremely unhappy ever since patch 12.05 came through, and they pretty much stated that they ruined the spec for them, which obviously I don't blame them. They became way worse with the half patch and this is weird because most of the time whenever they do some kind of a mini rework on the specs, they always end up being good, but with Hunter they end up being pretty bad. So are those buffs going to change the situation for Hunter? Probably not, but they're going to help them become better in M+ and in the raid. Moving forward to Frost Mage. Frost Mage, shatter damage to the primary target reduced by 6%. That's a nerf to Frost Mage. Bug fixes last week to handle Frost and Flurry provided a meaningful damage increase to Frost. This change is primarily intended to offset the boost from the fixes. Okay, so nerf to Frost Mage. Monks, Brewmaster Monk has been nerfed. High tolerance refunds now 2 to 4 seconds putrefying brew instead of 3 to 6 seconds, and Zaid state increased target effectiveness by 15% from 20. So that means slightly less tanky. Overall, brew still to be the best by far. Worry not. Paladin, Holy Paladin got another healing buff. Eternal Flame, Word of Glory 15%, Light of Dawn 15% healing buff. That's gonna help them both in the raid and in Mythic Plus, specifically in the raid where they struggle to compete against other healing specs. Protection Warrior 10% based armor increase. This is the second time they're buffing the armor to Protection Warrior, and as I told you, Protection Paladin, my bad. Protection Paladin has everything but durability. This would definitely help them strengthen their defensive profile. Is that going to put them ahead of others? Uncertain so far. To keep in mind, they also buffed Vengeance DH, and you're going to see in a bit, they're also going to be buffing Protection Warrior. So, you know, it's going to definitely help them. Discipline Priest. Our goal here is to slightly rein the atonement healing contribution in the raid environments while keeping its effectiveness in a smaller group content. So they buffed atonement here. This is a quite heavy buff to, I think that's like 8% buff to atonement roughly, right? Yeah, give or take, I think like around 7% buff to atonement. However, Atonement healing now decays more rapidly beyond 5 targets. TLDR here, if you have 20 injured allies with Atonement, it will previously be reduced by 50%. With a new scaling, it will be reduced by 60. So that's still gonna be likely a small nerf to Atonement in rate. I would say roughly like what? I don't know, couple percentage nerf in rate. However, they're buffing Atonement for Mythic Plus. That's good. On top of this, Holy Priest gets another buff. 6% aura buff on all healing spells on Holy Priest. This is the third consecutive buff for Holy Priest and the second consecutive aura healing buff on Holy Priest. I don't know how behind they were in rate, but that most definitely has helped them tremendously. Rogue. I want to show you what the Rogue Discord have said here. I love Rogue Discord. They're always so like always really able to like communicate fast, which is something that I really appreciate on like especially Outlaw guys. Let me just read it first. Outlaw, all damage increased by 5%. However, Trickster has been changed here for worse. They nerfed Trickster, but they buffed overall all Outlaws, and here's what they have to say here. Cloud cover has been nerfed, obviously to be expected. A few observations, 5% aura is not nearly enough to offset the nerfs. Overall, it looks like a 6% nerf on single target and roughly 4% nerf in AoE. They're pretty much here saying that Trickster might still be ahead of Fatebound, but obviously is going to be worse than last week. So that's the TLDR here for Outlaw. Outlaws are getting a nerf. Now, when it comes down to Sub-Rogue, they haven't not yet added a commentary here. Let me just double check here. They haven't really added a commentary whether that's going to be a nerf or a buff, but I would assume because all of this accounted for a nerf on Outlaw. Let me just read it again. Cloud cover primary and secondary duration reduced to 6 seconds was 10. Similar nerf here for Outlaw as well. And Sculpture crit chance bonus increased to 12% was 10. Oh, that's extra bonus crit chance. Okay, for Trickster. Additional stacks of face granted by cloud cover no longer increase the magnitude. Okay. So that those are hefty nerfs on Trickster out Sub-Rogue. Question is, are you now gonna play Deathstalker based on the aura buffs they gave you here for Sub-Rogue? Or are you gonna still play Trickster because obviously those nerfs are pretty significant, but they also buffed the extra crit bonus, right? So maybe, I'm not sure. There is no Theory Crafter note so far for Sub-Rogue. I would love to see that. Yeah, I am not sure. I'm gonna find out soon enough. Enhanced Shaman. Okay, let's see what they done to Enhanced Shaman. So, Enhanced Shaman has been underperforming in both raid and Mythic Plus content. With the new changes, we are aiming to increase throughput and help Starbringer catch up to totemic. Also resolving a bug which could have negative impact on performance. We are watching the results carefully. Okay, so they're saying keep in mind, it might get too OP, you know. All ability damage out above 5%, auto attack damage above by 10%. This is the bug that they resolved, by the way. Stormbringer also seems to be getting yet another buff. Both Natural Gift got buffed and Voltic Surge got buffed. Now, question is, let me just check on Shaman Discord. Have they shown anything when it comes down to enhancer pins? Is there any information? Yes, there is. Okay, so here's what WordUp says. By the way, shout out to WordUp. He is absolutely the goat on enhanced Shamans. AoE, how much? Blah, blah, blah. It's obviously bad for the Alcoran, but it's no more than Sims. Stormbringer is closer in theory, but still held back by RNG damage profile problems in the raids by design. Might get away with it, but can't say a reason to play it on basically any fight. Okay, so he's talking about raid. What about single target sim? Let me just take a look real quick. Okay, so that's definitely, as you can see, quite hefty totemic buffs here on single target, and Stormbringer buffs are not really as big. And let me just check AoE sims real quick. Ooh, those are actually quite significant buffs. See that? See how much the Stormbringer here gets to be buffed? That's like what, roughly 8% give or take. I mean, napkin math here. 8% for Stormbringer and like what? Roughly like 5% for Totemic. Something along that line. So Totemic is getting less single target buffs compared to Stormbringer, but still ahead on ST, and on AoE, Stormbringer is getting very close to Demic. Overall, you're still gonna play Elemental or Enhancer, but you're no longer gonna be terrible pickup, okay? Moving forward to Affliction Warlock. This is exactly what every single Warlock player wanted to see. Affliction getting single target buffs. So, 20% unstable Affliction buff. Speed of Corruption got buffed by 10%. Absolute no idea why. The AoE was already doing good, but I'll take it. 10% more agony damage and 20% more corruption. But it says here, this change does not affect Wither, which pretty much means you will be playing Soul Harvester exclusively. Probably. Those are very good news for Affliction Warlocks, so I'm happy to play it myself and try it out on Wednesday. Warrior. So TLDR Warriors, actually quite happy for them. Arms getting quite hefty buffs, Fury getting quite hefty buffs, as well as Protection. Now, before I read those buffs, I am going to show you what the Warrior Discord said. By the way, shout out to the Archie from the Warrior Discord. He's always on top of his game and willing to communicate of what's happening with Warriors and whatnot. Let me just check where he posted that. Is it here in Fury Warrior? No. Updates midnight? Yes. Okay. So on single target, Fury Slayer gains roughly 10% single target damage and Arms gets roughly 8%. That's Slayer. Slayer multi-target, Fury Slayer gains roughly 10%, Arms gets 6%. So Mountain Taint gains 6% in both cases, while this impact on Colossus is pretty minimal. Okay, so that pretty much means Slayer might be the play here for both as Fury and Arms. I think Arms are already playing Slayer for the most part, so that's going to be good for them. However, don't be too happy because, as you guys seen, there was a Deep Wounds hotfix, which resulted in roughly 2 to 4% nerf. So, you are still getting a buff, but you're not getting the buffs that you think you are getting because of this stealth hotfix. Overall, still great for Warriors, especially when it comes down to physical comps, because people are now more excited to play them. Okay. Protection Warrior also gets a slight single target buffs, both as Execute and just Mountain Taint overall. So that's every single change so far, guys. What do you guys think? They buffed the top dogs, which right now nerfing Unholy Decay, nerfing Devourer and Augmentation. It only does one thing. It puts Demonology Warlock, it puts Eli Shaman, it puts like Frost Mage, Balance Druid closer to the comps. Before that, the gap is shrinking, but I still believe the top specs might remain top specs. You're gonna see some shifting of maybe Warlocks instead of Devourer DH right now. Uncertain. We're gonna find out soon enough how this is gonna impact. But thank you once again for watching the stream, and as always, the video. If this videos or in general my videos has helped you become a better player or help you with information, make sure to follow the channel. This is the best way to show support. It helps me split my information further to more people. That's it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys on stream, and I gotta get to a wedding today, right? Yeah, I gotta.